Hi, welcome to Coffee with Tanks, the Sunday half-hour edition. If you want some coffee and talk about fish tanks for a little while, you got the right place. Not too bad, not too bad. All right, so I'm gonna go a different direction here than most, but I think a lot of my viewers here are pretty familiar with being busy, right? We're always busy, probably too busy to take care of our tanks sometimes. So myself, I'm a busy dad, right? And that was a big adjustment for an aquarium hobbyist. I just used to having like all kinds of free time. You go into being a dad and you have no time to take care of everything, right? And then your tank ends up looking kind of not what you want it to look like, right? Myself included, right? This is my example. So I just have like a few points of advice, and we're just kind of just gonna chit chat. There's no, you may or may not find a lot of value in this video, but if you just want to chit chat about what to do about being too busy to take care of your tank and what are some options for us, that's what I want to talk about. So I would say we have to just kind of adjust our mindset, right? Expecting a little bit of failure or not the lush planted tank that we're kind of either used to, or maybe we've kind of achieved a different, some success with fish. We've bred some. I know myself, I've bred angelfish, dragon blood cichlids, guppies, different types of plants I've had propagated, right? So, we're used to kind of a successful fish tank world, right? We've bred shrimp, there's a little bit of everything, right? This is my cat, I don't know if you can see her on screen. But we really have to just adjust our mindset if we're too busy for a fish tank. And just know that it's not gonna be like that. So what we can do ahead of time, if we know that we're kind of entering a busy part of life, we can plan for that, right? Or if it's too late, you're already too busy and your tank's kind of failing, you can scale back and plan and simplify your fish keeping hobby for a little bit, right? Try to choose things that are low maintenance and things that are right for your water condition. If it's too hard to try to adjust your water, have RO systems and things like that. Like, we don't usually have money for that when we have a new family, right? So trying to just choose simple things that can keep your hobby going, right? We need to be mindful of things that are just low maintenance. So right now, like you can see here, I've mostly just got guppies and some guppy grass, right? And for most people, they're going, are you serious? Like, that's not at all what I'm used to, right? Like, I'm used to like keeping like some really rare stuff like discus or even angelfish require a little bit more maintenance, not really too much, but just they're a little bit more expensive and require a bigger tank, and that just takes a little longer to change the water, things like that. So I went down to this 29 gallon just to keep the hobby going, right? And I started out with a planted tank in here, and it really hasn't gone very well, and I want to talk about that a little bit in this channel. And I have a couple of ideas what's going on there, and that'll be like a little bit of a teaser we'll talk about that most people don't even talk about, right? Why this planted tank doesn't look amazing, right? This is subpar, right? This is maybe the average fish keeper, which is most people are busy, so this is probably your average aquarium, which is fine. I enjoy it. I'm going to do a couple of little tweaks that most people aren't really talking about in the planted tank community. So let's see. I want to talk just a little bit more about why we keep fish, right? If we're so busy, like, why not just shut it down, right? But if you think about it from like a psychological human being approach, right? Humans, myself included, especially, you may not know it or be aware of it, but we love to solve problems, right? And having a fish tank, you're constantly tweaking things or coming up with like, I'd like to have that. What does it take to get there, right? It's just having a nice problem and solution in your life. And on top of that, they say it's got all that, calming effect, relieve stress, that kind of thing, right? So I recommend, if you're getting too busy, you don't like how your tank looks, don't tear it down. Maybe sell it if it's too big or something. You can scale down to something more manageable. And then keep your creativity going, keep your little problem solving going in your head, because it's really good for your family to see that you have a successful hobby that you don't give up on, right? If you enjoy the fish keeping hobby, don't give up on it. Your family needs to see you be successful outside of your workplace. Like, you're probably a successful person at work. You're not quitting every 2 weeks or something, right? You can maintain a job. You're a successful person, but your family doesn't always see those successes. They just kind of see, okay, you go to work and you come back home, right? But when you have a successful hobby that you keep going for years, like, they kind of see a little bit of who you are outside of work and how successful you are outside of work, if that makes any sense. Like, you don't want to just be someone that goes to work and comes home and just, too structured, and just, like, in my opinion, that's just not good to not have any hobbies like this, right? And then if you're quitting the aquarium hobby, like, that's kind of setting a bad example too, right? Like, if you can keep it at least nice and clean, and where it's something that has that stress relieving component to it, where it's kind of just enjoyable to sit there and relax and watch, it's good for the family. Like, if they don't enjoy the hobby with you, it is taking time away from them. So it's smart to scale back if you're taking time from your family and they're not enjoying the hobby with you. So think about that when you're setting up your tanks, or if you're struggling with a tank that's not quite how you want it. Be mindful. Your family deserves your time, right? And you deserve to spend your time with your family. They're only with you for a little while, really, if you think about it. All right, so a little different aquarium advice, right? It's more of managing your time and being a busy dad, and you're working full time. Sorry, I keep going to busy dad. That's who I am, right? That may not be your situation, but you could probably relate in some way, right? Or empathize if not. So that's kind of how fish tank aquarium keeping hobby is for us. Let's see. I want to talk about kind of where this tank is headed. Let me just give you that teaser, right? What are the things that people aren't saying about these planted tanks that I'm going to talk about and experiment with? So I used to have really nice planted tanks. There's some examples of them in my other videos. And I would say they were always more successful than this one. This one's been set up for about 2 years now. And yeah, it looks okay, but it's most of the plants that I bought died off. So what I want to talk about is, or what really changed from having those planted tanks when I was like in my 20s, now I'm in my 40s. What the biggest change is, I was living in places that had similar water conditions, right? City water, and it was hard water where I live, right? Typical high pH, everybody knows. I'm in Minnesota right now. So people are usually familiar with the high water or high hardness kind of hard water situation up here in Minnesota, and most of the Midwest and country, frankly. So typical hard water situation, you probably can relate. But and I had planted tanks that were successful, and I really didn't do that much to make them that way, right? Just typical root tabs, and sometimes I did some dirted tanks, and those were good. But what we see here, the biggest change, I moved into homes at some point, probably around 38 years old, that had water softeners, right? Using that sodium little crystals, or sometimes those pellets, right? That soften all your water for your house, right? And I looked it up. It said, and Google searches, they said, it's not really a problem. It's not that much sodium, right? You've seen some videos on YouTube where they're talking about, okay, if you've ever had a water softener, you thought maybe that's the problem, you looked it up. It's really hard to get information on, is it really good for your tank or not, right? And they say, it's not really that much sodium and whatever, but real, like a high level, it sounds like it is a problem. I'm going to test that. That seems to be the biggest shift for me that I've noticed, is like, before the water softeners, my planted tanks looked fine. And then after, not so much. So, some plants are okay in the guppy grass is fine, doesn't seem to care. But everything else kind of really is suffering. Like, if you look at this Vallisneria, it's like really stunted. Okay, so Basically, if you look it up, they say that the water softeners with the sodium, they strip or exchange. I won't get too detailed because I'm not a scientist, right? But I kind of understand just the basic language of it. Is it exchanges calcium and magnesium for sodium, right? So you're getting rid of calcium and magnesium, and your result is supposed to be low KH and low GH, right? So carbonate hardness and what is the other one? Hold on. This is kind of the long format. I'm just going to keep talking, right? They call KH carbonate hardness. The other one they just call total hardness, GH. Kind of forget the details on that. Sometimes you get where you learn something 5 years ago and then you go, I don't remember what that really means. But basically, so they have the you're supposed to have lower calcium, lower magnesium, and higher sodium, which I don't know if you can even test for that. But you're supposed to see that you have lower GH and KH when you have softened water. That's kind of how that's supposed to work. But I did a test before the show here. I have tank water test right here let me just show you. This is my test kit. I don't think it's super accurate. Like the strips barely tell you, like even if you're reading it right. It's from Say Summer. I don't think we got it on Amazon. I'll put some links down later. I do have an affiliate program with Amazon that I just started. I appreciate it if you use it down in the comments, but I'll put some links to stuff like this that if you want to get your aquarium going right. And if you like anything you see, check it out, get your supplies. But the point is, this is my tank water test strip, and I'll show you the little chart here. And I compared it to my tap water, right? So I have some aging tap water in a barrel, but this is tank water. And then, so if you look, and you won't be able to see this, but I'll point it out to you. The GH is this purpley one. So this reads, when I first dipped it, you can see it changed color a little bit on me. But this purple one, when I first dipped it, you're supposed to read it after 15 seconds of dipping it in the water. It read about 75 parts per million on the GH. And that's with this water softener aquarium, right? Like I'm using the softened water in this aquarium. So right now it's reading at 75, which is kind of that medium zone on this. And the KH, let me just get to all the readings real quick. The KH read like top of the chart, 300, all the way high. So I'm like, hold on, if I'm using softened water, why is my, my GH is kind of in the middle, which is a little bit low. But the KH is like off the charts high. So that's the carbonate hardness. I'm sure a lot of people understand this even better than I do, which is fine. But my experience is kind of what I'm sharing. So why does my water softener not seem to lower the KH at all? Like it's just super high. And then comparing it to my tap water, right? Let me get that strip. So comparing it to this one, the purpley one again is the GH. When I first took it out, it was like super bright purple. It was like 300, the top of the chart, like super high, which made sense, right? So the softened water is lowering the GH by at least half. So that was interesting to see. And then the carbonate hardness, the KH, is this green one. It's still reading like that 300 off the charts, right? So the KH doesn't seem to be affected at all by the water softener, at least with my tank, the way this is going. But the GH was cut down roughly half. These numbers are very, the colors don't really match up very well. You can just kind of guess. So anyways, I'm thinking that the sodium is having effects on the plants, mostly. The fish seem like pretty happy. Some of their tails are a little bit like torn up a little bit, and I don't like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start changing the water with dechlorinated tap water. And it's going to be harder water, right? Higher pH probably, higher GH, and maybe higher KH. According to the test strips, that's not true. But definitely higher GH, right? So I want to see just what effects does that have on a planted tank. And we'll see how that does with the guppies too, right? So that'll be a big change. We'll see to the plants start growing back, right? Number 2, people in the aquarium hobby with the planted tanks. We get them going, right? We get them started. We get, you get a little bit of everything. You're supposed to cover the tank with dense coverage, right? There's, fill it up so that the plants are out competing the algae, right? You've heard all of this before. I know you watch all the YouTube. Okay, so one thing that I noticed that I failed at on this tank that I just wasn't super aware of when it was happening, I had floating plants. I got those red root floaters, and I let them cover the surface, right? And I got too busy in life to really deal with it, and I think that blocked all that light. And then all the plants were like light starved, right? And all the red root floaters were loving it. They were fine. They had all the light. So, keep an eye on that, right? These are the adjustments that I'm going to do. I'm going to change from using that softened water, and I'm going to not have too many floating plants. This guppy grass kind of gets up there and does the same thing, right? So I'm going to try to monitor that a lot closer and see if those things, just little tweaks, get this planted tank rolling again, right? All right. So that's mostly what I want to talk about, but I had some interesting experience. Everyone talks about AI now these days, right? And I like to use Grok. That's the X platform version of AI, right? And I wanted to run a lot of what I just talked about through AI to see what it's, what is it information is it able to research and go through and spit out at me, to see am I on the right track. And I've seen some articles and videos coming out now that are saying that sometimes AI gives you the wrong information. So definitely be aware that you should double check your work when you're using AI. But if you don't have a lot of time to research something, but you want an answer quick, and maybe you're not going to act on it quick, but you just want to know, so you kind of fulfill that curiosity in your head real quick, go ahead and ask Grok, right? Like, you know how to use it. You go to the X app, and then on the bottom there's kind of a weird little symbol. Click on that. There's like a little search bar. Man, type in your question and it'll spit out a well-researched little piece, right? So I did that, and I'm going to share some results with you, right? So I used Grok to solve a little fish tank problem. I'm going to read my little script here. I asked Grok, I said that, I'm going to summarize a bit here. I said I'm going to have a simple setup. It's everything I enjoy about the hobby without neglecting the family and spending too much money, right? So Grok came back with a huge, 2-page result. So more specifically, I asked it about creating a nice, affordable 29-gallon planted tank with guppies. And I said, I have high pH, high GH, and high KH. So to summarize what Grok was saying, it said to focus on leveraging your natural water parameters rather than fighting them, right? So go with things that do well in those water conditions, right? So hard water, you want to choose hard water fish, which guppies happen to be okay. And then you want to choose plants that are okay in hard water, right? So I should mention that AI is scraping all kinds of YouTube videos and things, so not trying to step on any feet that if this is what they said, yes, I agree, this is coming from other places. Some places that it mentions, obviously Aquarium Co-op, Aquarium Coop, depending on how you want to say that. Sometimes he says it like that. Dustin's Fish Tanks. There's a couple other ones that Grok had mentioned. It does disclose where this information is coming from, but I think since I'm summarizing it, I'm not gonna necessarily give all of the credits out, right? But focusing on your water parameters so that if you have hard water, get things that do well in your hard water. That's gonna be really good if you're a busy person trying to lower your maintenance. All right. So instead of leveraging your water parameters instead of fighting them. All right, plants for hard water. Some people don't seem to have any problems, but it says for this here, it says many plants, this is Grok kind of summarizing what Grok said, many plants struggle with hard water But there are plenty of hardy, low maintenance options to tolerate, or even prefer hard water. And this would, I was asking it to give me a list of like low maintenance ideas for my tank, right? So it said that there's plants that prefer low tech with no CO2, right? So we don't want to be doing CO2. That's just going to add a lot of complexity to your tank. All right, so let's see. It spit out a whole list of equipment that you should look into getting, and so I'll go over this. You probably have almost all of this stuff, but if you're trying to follow this as like a how-to build an aquarium, I mean, Grok spit out an answer exactly like, you can basically just do a shopping list. So I said, instead to look like if you're doing a 29-gallon tank is what I was asking it to ask about, you could adjust that for whatever you're looking to do. But it says recommends you buying a used aquarium. It says to buy a hang-on back filter, which I have an internal filter, is just as good. But a hang-on back is probably just beginner friendly, where it's easier to clean it, do maintenance on it, things like that. And they're pretty much just plug and play, right? So I can understand why it recommended that for easy maintenance. It says get a heater if you're doing a 29-gallon tank, 100 to 150 watts. I always recommend, this is not what Grok said, but I always recommend get 2 heaters that are maybe a little bit smaller than just one big one, because I did not do that here, but that's highly recommended, because if one heater fails, then a lot of people say that it can basically boil the tank. Probably not literally, but if a heater fails, you usually stick on, and then the water gets too hot and everything dies. But if they're a little bit undersized and you have 2 of them, it usually can't raise the temperature too much, is what they say. Okay. And it says get a basic light. I was really shocked that it said that, but it says it recommended the Nycrew light. You're familiar with that one. Nycrew Classic LED. I have a Higer. You guys are probably familiar a little bit with the Higer brand. They kind of splash onto the scene. You can see this thing. I think it's about 30 inches. I got that on Amazon. Again, I am a new affiliate to Amazon, and as such, they want you to disclose that when you're talking about selling product or doing a video about products that you might be trying to sell. So I'm not trying to hide that. That's out in the open. Let's see. So I like the Higer light, and what I like about them is they get that 24/7 setting, where it's like a timer, but it does like a little bit of a sunrise and a sunset, where it gradually comes on, and then when it's time for it to go off, it gradually goes off. That's my favorite thing about it, that normal lights don't do. I like, you're gonna get a light and you enjoy like fish tank watching, I think you'll really like 24/7 setting. I've had the Finnex 24/7 planted on a different tank. Oh my goodness. So much better than the Higer. I hate to say it. Way more expensive. But the setting for a sunset, sunrise is so beautiful. It gets like this reddish glow sometimes, and like reddish purple glow in the morning, and like it really simulates a sunset and a sunrise so well. It's beautiful. Highly recommend that if you've got a little extra money to put into the light. We don't really need to worry too much about a good light here, because we're not going with CO2, and we're going to make sure we don't do too much like floating plants, or keep the tops clean, all that stuff. So your light just says get a basic light. All right, so far you got the hang-on back filter on a used tank, 100 to 150 watt heater, and a basic light. Then for the substrate, I actually have pool filter sand. That is what Grok recommended, or fine gravel, right? So not your real thick, like the regular gravel that people have in their tanks, like old school aquariums with the chunky gravel. You want fine gravel because of your plants, right? And then not too many big particles go down, because the fine gravel has smaller holes, right? And then it says to get root tabs and feed it once or twice a month. All right. Get dechlorinator for your adding water. You always want to use dechlorinated water with fish tanks. Anytime you add water, definitely has to have the dechlorinator. Just follow the directions on the bottle. All right, this is add your driftwood, add your rocks. This says get a test kit. Everyone uses the API test kit. I have a master test kit, the API brand. Like this. This is the guide that comes with it, right? You're familiar with these. It has little droppers, right? And little drops and the little test tubes. These are just annoying to me because, like, I don't know. They just like I don't have like a great setup where like I can set the little tubes up, and it just seems like they always fall over on me. And I just would much prefer these strips that I use. I just like that better. It's just way easier. But API, probably put some links to that too. So just it says to test your water weekly, but so you'll need a test kit. That way, like especially if you're starting a brand new tank, when you're cycling it, you'll need a test kit. You'll need a gravel vac, so like everyone knows, kind of forget what else you call those. There's another word for them, but it does the suction gravel. It's got that tube, and you just siphon it. It's a siphon. There you go. Siphon it into a bucket, like a 5-gallon bucket. And that's how you take out 5 gallons at a time, or probably 4 gallons at a time if you're leaving it not quite filled up to the top. So yeah, you'll need a gravel vac. You will need a 5-gallon bucket. Grok did not mention that. Guarantee you will need a 5-gallon bucket. So go ahead if you don't have one, and you can just grab one of those. It says to use a liquid fertilizer. They recommend, and Grok recommends Seachem Flourish. Now, I don't ever hear aquarium hobbyists recommending that. Don't know. It's been a long time since I looked at the difference. So maybe look that up. Go with Flourish. I did some research like 5 years ago, whatever, when I was doing planted tanks more heavily. And this seemed to be like a really big contender. Maybe not everyone talks about this one. Nylock G Thrive. And this is Thrive S for shrimp safe with no copper. So anyways, if you look at my results, like this is 2 years going on, right? And I've had busy life, right? So not always the best caretaker and maintenance for a fish tank, but so I wouldn't judge this off of that. It's supposed to have macronutrients, micronutrients, all the essential minerals, right? Kind of an all-in-one. So I thought Nylock G was doing good, and I don't know that my results show it, but I'm thinking that it's, again, that lighting situation where I had the floating plants and I had the water softener water where, it doesn't matter what fertilizer you put in, it's just not going to really flourish. No pun intended, Seachem Flourish. Anyways, Grok actually recommends, I don't know where this information was being pulled from, but it says to start, if you're just starting a new tank, it says to start the liquid fertilizer at half strength. Maybe that's because you're gonna have your plants aren't established yet, so they're not really eating that much right off the bat. I suppose that's probably why. And then basically you're kind of starving out the algae that doesn't have as many, it's just not as concerned, right? It's not, algae is just like ready to go. The plants have to like adjust to your water. Algae is not super picky about that kind of thing. So I think it's about starving your algae, is my guess. So start out at half strength. I don't know, I'd probably kick it up to full strength after 2 weeks. All right. So again, keep in mind, we're gonna switch gears from your list of like dry goods, basically, for like a hard water setup for guppies and plants, right? This is the fun stuff, right? Okay, plant selection, according to Grok, and wherever all that information is coming from, it says to use Vallisneria, Anubias, right? I have some Anubias here. Java Fern, I don't have that one. I never had success with that one. I had it a couple times and it just always kind of turns brown, and I'm sure everyone that keeps Java Fern is like, oh my god, that's such an easy problem, like potassium or something, right? And maybe I wasn't fertilizing very good back then. Okay, so anyways, let me get back to the plant list. Hornwort, some people love it. I don't really love hornwort. I don't know, I'd probably skip that one. But if you want something that's got kind of like a feathery look to it. That's kind of nice. It does grow like a weed. I think very similar to Kabamba. I hate to say it, like I don't know if that one really be compatible with hard water or not, because I didn't really look into it. I just kind of went and spitting out like what Grok said. Just kind of interesting, right? Like to see like how can AI help us, right? Without like going overboard with researching, right? Because you can really exhaust yourself and spend hours researching this stuff. All right, and then it says to use crypts like Crypt 20 and Crypt you know how these go. Crispatula. Crypt Crispatula. I don't know if I've had that one. I have Wenti. Those do really well. Amazon Sword, obviously everyone knows that one, and Java Moss. Right, so I think that'd be a fairly nice plant to tank. Nothing's really red in that combo, so like if you really want red, like I don't know, maybe it's not your time for red if you're too busy to take care of a tank, right? If you're going with a simple, easy maintenance tank, you're kind of, with hard water, you're kind of limited maybe. But I think that'd be a really nice looking tank. Pretty good variety. You got Vallisneria, Anubias, Java Fern, Hornwort, Crypt 20 and Crispatula, Amazon Sword, and Java Moss, right? So a lot of different textures, mostly green, all green. Some Amazon Swords are not. They use some red ones, so that'd be nice. And some crypts, they have some crypt like Flamingo. I don't know if that would be good for hard water, but yeah, I don't know. You could play around, maybe get some color in there. If you're like me, like you don't mind buying a plant and just kind of seeing, but if you want to be like pretty sure, try those out. All right, then it gives a step-by-step how to set all of it up, right? So it says, I just thought this was amazing. This is all the like single answer that Grok gave when I said, hey, I'm trying to set up an easy 29-gallon tank for guppies and plants, right? All of the stuff that I said is what it told me, right? Amazing amount of research just coming right at you within seconds, right? Again, be careful that you're following just AI's advice. They say it hallucinates, and you know, people say it's causing problems, but I don't see anything wrong with the advice that it gave. So far, everything that it told me was, you know, pretty much spot on with what research you can do. All right, so it says step-by-step instructions, right? So you got the tank, you get all the equipment, then you got to rinse the substrate, put 2 or 3 inches deep. Some people say less. 2 inches sounds like everybody seems to like that. I think I've got somewhere in there 2 to 3 inches here myself. All right, then you decorate it, right? So you rinse your substrate, put it in, decorate, got your driftwood or plants, whatever, not plants yet, just driftwood, rocks, things, decorations. I got a fake rock over here. I figured, I don't know, I had that in storage for a long time, and I didn't like it for a while. I would have like natural aquariums, just driftwood and rocks, but at some point I was like, let's just throw that back in there, right? So this is fake rock. No, nothing wrong with fake rocks. If you like fake rocks, go for it. Or castles even, right? But most people that are doing plants and tanks, like obviously, right, you know, you want to do driftwood. A lot of people are doing spiderwood. You can get all that stuff at your pet shop or whatever. Okay, so put your decorations in. Put your heater in. No, fill it up first. Fill it up with dechlorinated water. I skipped a step. All right, so fill it up with water. You install the filter, the heater, the light. Then it says to run it for 24 hours, right? Don't know, forget what it said, why. I don't know if it gave a reason. Then it says to next day, right? Maybe you could wait 2 or 3 days. Doesn't probably matter too much, but if you don't get this step in too quick, the algae could probably become a problem. So put your plants in. So go get your plants 1 day, 2 days later. It says to cover 70 to 80% of the bottom of the tank's bottom of the surface, right? That kind of coverage is good. It's good to cycle the tank. Plants help with that a little bit. It's a little bit of bacteria that will come in with them. For the biological filtration, which is kind of the slow part of filtration. It takes, usually they're saying like 60 days to cycle. Okay, and then having that much plant coverage, it's recommended so that you're not, you have enough plants that are eating the nutrients that it's competing with the algae, where the algae shouldn't take off. Not necessarily, every tank is different. All right, then it says to cycle for 4 to 6 weeks. It does not, well, it does say to do, yeah, it says to use the fishless cycle by adding just a little bit of flake food. It says you can get up to 2 to 4 parts per million. I think it's saying ammonia, but it didn't actually say that. But basically just put a pinch of fish food in every day, like a small pinch, and it'll raise the ammonia, which will, the cycle, but well, let's cover it. We're doing long form today. So you get ammonia first, and then there'll be bacteria that can eat ammonia and produce nitrites, right? This is what they call cycling a tank. So first you get ammonia by putting fish food in. Then bacteria will grow in your filter and all over the tank, but basically in your filter. Then your nitrites will go up because the bacteria that eat the ammonia create nitrites as their waste product, right? So you get nitrites. Then there's bacteria that will start growing in your aquarium, and their numbers will increase, that eat nitrites. And the nitrites have another type of bacteria that eat nitrites, and then they turn their waste product is nitrates. If you're familiar with nitrates, or if you're familiar with plants at all, just if you do a lot of lawn care, right, you're familiar with the word nitrates a lot, right? That word's kind of all over the place. If you're into farming at all, like nitrates is like a big word, like everybody knows about nitrates. But that's how this cycle works in an aquarium, right? So you got different types of bacteria that need time to eat the ammonia, and then enough of them grow to take care of like the amount of ammonia that like fish and all that will create, right? So you need a little bit of time for that to happen. Nitrites, you need a different type of bacteria for that. And then when your nitrates start going up, when you're testing, you got to see 0 ammonia eventually, like after like 4 to 6 weeks. 0 nitrites, right? This is a sign of a fully cycled aquarium and filter ready to go for fish. All right. So you want your nitrates to start rising, and you want them to be like around 25 parts per million, right? And you get your test kits, they'll start showing you that. And you actually want to keep your nitrates. If you have a plant tank, like you need nitrates in there. Nitrates, not nitrites, nitrates. That's actually good for your tank. You don't want to go too high, like probably I would say probably 60 parts per million is getting where you're like, oh, we better do a water change, right? But if you keep your tank around like 25, 30 parts per million of nitrates, that keeps a constant food source for your plants. All right. If you want to shortcut this cycle, it's recommended, and Grok says this too, you can use seeded biological media from an established tank, right? So you could either like grab their filter, if there's someone's willing to give you their filter out of a tank, or if you have multiple tanks, you can do that. But you can go to a fish store, they can give you like some of their stuff that already has all of those bacteria going. So if you squeeze that into your tank, you'll have all of that stuff going a lot faster, right? All right, then after the fishless cycle, so like 6 to 8 weeks, you can add some fish. It recommends, this is Grok again, I'll just go with what it says. Said try adding 6 to 8 guppies. So that's not a bad recommendation. I like it. That'll give you something to look at, right? I have close to probably 15 in here. I mean, it doesn't always look like it. If you I'm counting some of the babies into 15, right? But that's a good start. They're gonna breed, so like I would recommend a trio of guppies. Get a trio, get one that you really like, go for it. But you do what you want. If you're trying to have a simple tank that looks amazing, so you're gonna have all those different plants we talked about and a trio of guppies, and they're gonna breed. So like pick one that just looks good with those plants. I think that's like an awesome low maintenance tank, right? And if you get like it says, okay, so once you bring your fish home, you're gonna drip acclimate them. Everyone knows how to do that. Then it says to stock lightly, right? So like a trio is good. It says max fish is 20 guppies. I think I kind of agree with that. That sounds good. So once you hit 20 guppies, like you're gonna think about like, okay, who am I giving these to, right? Like, am I giving them to a pet shop, or well, how am I getting rid of these extra guppies that I've got? So that might be something you think about, because maybe if you don't have that maintenance time, maybe getting rid of guppies is like too overwhelming for you. So think about it. I would start small, get your trio. I've had this going for a year with this trio, and this is what I got, right? So results vary. So it says high quality food like Hikari, Flaker Pellet, or Omega-1, right? And it says to feed 1 to 2 times a day. So everyone kind of knows how to feed their fish, right? Don't overfeed them. But I think 1 time a day is plenty. Probably too much. You know, if you skip a feeding, that's not going to kill them. So I like the high quality food part. So I'm definitely myself, I think I'm going to get some probably Omega-1 or Hikari. I haven't decided. Leave me a comment. What's your preference for feeding your guppies, right? You know what I want to do? I want to get some Daphnia going, right? Some live food. And I think if I get some Daphnia going, and I think I can get them just like create like a food web in here, right? That's what I want to get going. A little food web, little biosphere action, right? Where you have like everything kind of working for you. I think that's super cool. All right. It gave advice. This is all the same answer. Gave advice for maintenance, right? So it says to do a 10 to 25% weekly water change, and obviously use that dechlorinator, and then test weekly for ammonia, nitrite, pH, GH, and KH. That's what it says. And then for algae control, it says to limit your light hours. We could probably talk about that for hours, but limit your light hours if you're getting algae, right? So I think everyone says start with 8 hours of light, and then adjust down if you've got some algae. You could go 6 hours. It's enough for the plants is 6 hours. I like that. But if you know, maybe you need more light for your plants because you've got like a basic light, so maybe they need a little bit longer. So I think at first try 8 and dial back if you get algae, dial up if you're not seeing a lot of plant growth. Okay. Add some floating plants that'll help keep the algae under control, but again, don't get more than like a handful at a time. Like a handful of like floating plants that's like moving around in the water current, like that's fine. But like if you let it cover the entire surface, I'm gonna do a whole video on that of what my tank looked like when I had those floating plants, the red root floaters just going nuts. The whole surface got covered, and it's just dark in the tank. So don't do that, right? Just get like a handful. If you get like 2 handfuls worth, like, you know, like 5 or 6 inches on a 29-gallon tank, like that's like maybe what, 20% coverage, but it's moving around. It's fine. Don't get like more than like 20% coverage, and find people to sell them, right? People love floating plants. So they eat like extra nitrates, and then they help compete with that algae. Okay, and then it says you can add snails and Otocinclus. I have done Otocinclus. Sometimes I like them, sometimes I don't. They seem a little bit too sensitive to me. Like I end up like they don't live long, so I don't love that. They're kind of getting expensive. Snails, okay. So maybe you can tell me in the comments, but snails should be easy, right? Like I've got pond snails in here, like the regular, everybody gets the bladder snail, pond snails. But I tried a mystery snail, and it died in 1 day. And I think it's that water softener salt again. So I don't know. I'm sure people out there are like, oh, I've got a water softener, and it's not a problem. My snails are fine. But I don't know. Not sure. I would love to have some snails in here, but we'll see. So it says get some snails for algae control as well. Okay, then I actually tried to see what Grok would say about my water softener, right? So I asked it another question. And if you used AI, you can kind of keep the conversation going, and it sort of remembers what you're talking about. So you can simply say, like, should I be worried about using my water softener for this setup? Here's what Grok said. Yes, it removes the calcium and magnesium and replaces it with sodium. It can cause low GH, which we see that in my test results, right? So I went from like 300 plus to 75, which I looked it up, parts per million, right? You, for guppies, can have 100 parts per million. up to, this we're talking about GH, right? 357 parts per million is like what guppies live in their natural habitat. Up to 357 parts per million. So, GH shouldn't be a problem if you're going on the high end. The low end in nature is said, I don't know if I wrote that down. I wrote, so they have these degrees of general hardness, is 8 to 20 degrees. I forget the translation on that. I think that puts it like around 100 for 8 degrees. Yeah, I think 8 degrees of general hardness, right? There's two different ways to talk about GH. It's parts per million, and there's degrees of general, DGH. I think it's degrees of general hardness. Okay, so what am I saying? I'm not worried about the low end, right? But I could have been, right? So with the water softener, I had 75 parts per million, and really a need for guppies, they prefer 100 parts per million. So anyways, so using the tap water will be a benefit to my guppies, at least for the GH. Okay. So Grok was concerned about this water softener. It says that because it removes that and replaces it with calcium, magnesium, replaces it with sodium, causes that low GH, which I'm at 75, so I'm like 25 parts per million too low. It says guppies could experience stress and weakened immunity and poor color, reduced breeding, fin issues. All right, and it listed a couple more issues. I didn't write them down. Okay, and then your plants, they rely on that calcium and magnesium as well. So it's going to cause stunting, melting, yellowing, poor adaptation. So it says, what's the solution to this problem? It says bypass. Here's water softener. Water softener, if you have the big tank like I have, they have 2 twisty knobs on top. Just if you twist them, do a Google search or YouTube search, find out which way is closed, right? So you want to bypass the system. They all have a bypass. And it simply just, instead of using the water that's coming from the tanks, it's gonna just run water from your water supply, and it's gonna like U-turn it right back up into your supply line, up to your tank or whatever whatever you're filling. If you're filling a 5-gallon bucket or your tap water, right? Okay, so use your bypass. That's what Grok said, and then obviously use that dechlorinator, right? All right. So for a busy person, I think that's a great like baseline. Like, I'm gonna make a simple tank now, right? And so I've got some ideas for this, why this is looking like a mess, and what I'm gonna do to fix it, right? So I'm gonna get rid of using that water softener. It's funny because when you use a water softener, you don't really need dechlorinator, because that's part of what a water softener does. It has charcoal in there that does some kind of like exchange, and that gets flushed out when it cycles. So you actually don't have any chlorine in the water softener system. So that was one thing. I actually didn't use dechlorinator for years now, because when you're using the water softener, you just don't need it. So I actually don't have dechlorinator on hand. So small problem. Everyone has dechlorinator. Might order it off as Amazon. I'm not sure. But I'm gonna get some dechlorinator, use that, see if that makes any difference. Maybe I'm gonna keep track on this. Maybe we update every Sunday or so. Just kind of see, like, is that making a difference? And then I'm gonna make sure that I don't have like too much stuff covering that light, right? So that'll bring my general hardness back up to like whatever, like if you don't have a water softener, just whatever you're expecting out of your tap water with your hard water, typical hard water, right? We'll see if that makes any difference. So I hope that was helpful, right? I think one of the things that I was like most excited to share is just like when I figured out like why do I keep a fish tank, right? It's a big why. I like solving problems. I need that kind of thing. I guess it's kind of weird. It adds stress to life, but it gives you something to do, something to think about. Just a little bit of a challenge, right? And we just really enjoy that kind of thing, right? I think there's just a psychological piece to what we enjoy. And I think that's just what the aquarium hobby, like, aside from like everything's beautiful The fish are super fun to watch. I like breeding fish, propagating plants, watching stuff grow. Like, it's all super fun, but I think that real trigger for me where I could just never live without a fish tank. I tried it for probably months. I don't know if I went years. Probably went years at one point. But yeah, I keep coming back to having a fish tank, and I recommend that. There's that psychological pull. You have that problem to solve and really enjoy it. So thanks for having some coffee with me while we talk tanks. And let's do it again, probably like every Sunday. You don't have to watch it live. I'm gonna start doing it live. I just need 50 subscribers. So at some point I'm gonna have 50 subscribers and we can do this live on Sundays, and I'll figure out how to read your comments live. But go ahead, leave some comments for me. I'll try to reply to them after this is posted. And thanks for having coffee and tanks. Bye.